Well, welcome to the show. I'm Brendan.
I'm Corey, and this is Our View from the Bench. Welcome back, Benchwarmers. Round 2 of our MLB division breakdown is here as we cover the central divisions in each league.
We move to the heartland of America, covering those flyover states.
Here's everything you need to know about the AL and NL Central. I'm Brendan, backup bullpen catcher.
And I'm Corey, clubhouse mud rubber, and this is Our View from the Bench.
Now, before we get started, if you're not already, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new episode.
Also, if you like what you see, smash that like button for us. It's free for both of us, and it probably helps more than you think. Let's continue on this journey we've got through the MLB divisions. We're moving from that West Coast where we had that West Coast party in the previous two. Make sure you go check out the AL and NL West predictions. We're kind of moving towards the middle of America. We got the AL Central is where we're going to start. So, Corey or Brandon. Again, we're going to go in reverse order again. In case you missed the previous episodes, what we're doing is looking at the standings from the previous year. And whoever came in last, we're going to start predicting where we think they're going to come all the way until we get to first place. So let's start now with the AL Central. The Royals came in last place in the AL Central last year. How do you see their season turning around, or is it turning around this year?
Yeah, I see a slight improvement. Not a huge improvement necessarily, but I do see them going from 5th from last year to 4th this year. They don't really have a whole lot of pitching. I know Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha are their main two starters, and both of those guys are kind of past their prime, so I don't really see them coming out and having a huge year. Now, they did add Will Smith to their bullpen, and I know he's won a World Series the last 3 years, no matter what team he's on. He was on the Braves, the Astros, and Rangers, so it could be his 4th year in a row, but I don't think that's going to be the case with the Royals. So I don't see that continuing. Now, they do have one of the most exciting young players in baseball in Bobby Witt Jr., who signed a huge 11-year contract to be there for a long time. So at least the fans have something exciting to go watch at the Kauffman Stadium. I believe it's still called Kauffman.
I think so.
Yeah. Right? It was called that when we visited.
When we went, exactly, yeah. I'll double check right now for you just in case.
But beyond that, they just have an aging Salvador Perez who's nearing the end of his career. He's a huge part of why they even went to the World Series and won in 15. But he's still signed for next season at 22, so he's probably going to be here this year or next year, but I think he's coming near the end of his career. He's even starting to split some time from catcher to first base as well, because I would assume after all these years, the knees are starting to give up a little bit. But I just think they're going to be a slightly improved team from last year, but not enough to really make a huge difference. I mean, this AL Central is probably one of, if not the worst divisions in all of baseball as it is.
Yeah, agreed. It was last year, and it seems like it's probably going to be this year. Bobby Witt Jr. is pretty much where I'm at as well on this one. They don't really have much going on there besides him, but at least they do have something exciting. He's young, and he's very, very talented. They did also grab Hunter Renfroe, who had spent some time with the Angels. Again, he's not great. By the way, we're talking about Hunter Renfroe, who plays baseball. We're not talking about the wide receiver in the NFL, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I know the spelling's different, but isn't it crazy that somebody with the same exact name, at least the way it sounds, are playing professional sports in two different leagues? I think that's nuts.
At the same time, too.
Yeah, that's very true. It's not like historically.
Yeah, like sometimes there's a player that's retired and then another guy comes into a different league. Oh, they have the same name. That's weird. Which sport are you talking about? But they're actually both active players, which is kind of strange.
It's super weird. Also, I did confirm it's still Kauffman Stadium. You want to know something cool? When I Googled it right now, it said at the bottom, it said, you visited here 7 years ago.
Oh, what?
Yeah, because I'm signed into Google and I have like Google phone. I have an Android, so Google follows me around. So yeah, it knew that I was there 7 years ago.
Wow, that's weird. Visits. I was just going to say, I kind of forgot how many years ago it was. So, all right, good
Apparently,
to know.
According to Google, it was 7.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, they don't really look too great. I also actually have them coming in 4th as well. A little bit of improvement like we talked about from last year. But you kind of mentioned it. They don't really have much pitching. And the most exciting thing they got is Bobby Witt and Hunter Renfroe, which isn't much. The aging Salvador Perez, I mean, maybe he can kind of come back and do something. I know that he was really good, but
yeah,
age catches up to everybody except LeBron James and Tom Brady. So
yeah, for real.
Yeah, but I see the Royals exactly doing that same thing, coming in 4th place. But hey, progress is something. Yeah, at least it's some sort of movement.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And hopefully with Witt signed for the long term, they can have some other young guys, because they've been bad for so long, come up through their system with these top draft picks they've accumulated over time. And maybe in 2 or 3 years, we're having a different discussion, but not quite yet.
Not quite yet. We're going to keep a very similar discussion of low expectations. And we're going to move to the team that came in fourth place last season, which was the White Sox. So obviously they're not coming in fourth place this year, at least not according to us, because we both have the Royals. So where do you have them then?
This is where I have them flip flopping with the Royals. I have them going
Okay.
down to fifth place in the division. I honestly, you look at their roster, I don't see anything. I don't know why anybody would look at them and think they could be better than fifth in this division. They have Martin Maldonado, who's a really good catcher, who was with the Astros during their heyday, and that's great. And he's good defensively. His offense is okay as well, but if your catcher is probably your best player on your team, that's not a good sign usually.
No. I
So
mean, unless it's freaking Buster Posey or something.
yeah, well, yeah, he has generational talent, so I'll give you that part. But
hmm
then you look at the rest of their lineup. Jan Moncada, who they got from the Red Sox a long time ago, has just really been bad since he's got there. His offense has not been what was expected of him, even when he was in Boston, really, and they first brought him up. They have another former Red Sox, Andrew Benintendi, who, again, since he was in Boston, has kind of gone downhill and not been very good. And I kind of see that continuing this year. They do have one bright spot though, Luis Robert Jr., who last year had 38 home runs and 80 RBIs. Like he's pretty good, and again, it gives the fans something to go watch. But other than that, I don't see them really improving anywhere else on this roster. They traded Dylan Cease like a week or so before camp was over, so they got rid of one of their better pitchers. So I think they're just in a full rebuild mode at this point and tear it down, and hopefully, again, like the Royals, accumulate a lot of high draft picks, and hopefully in a couple years have the ability to compete again for a division title.
I mean, some of these smaller market teams can. I mean, the basic blueprint that you got to take is Baltimore's blueprint, right? I mean, they've been terrible for a very long time, in my
Yep.
opinion, and now they're. I mean, 100+ wins last year. That's pretty insane. But keeping with the White Sox, I am with you there, my friend. I do not think they're moving up to third. I think, as although this is not great division, I think they are one of the worst teams in it. I wrote basically that this team plays professional baseball sometimes in Chicago. That's pretty much all I know about it. They seem to have, like I said, be in super rebuild mode right now, even though not much has been built. They haven't been to the playoffs or at least a deep run since 2021, I believe it is. So it's a couple of years now. And I'm with you. I was going over the roster, and there are names that you've heard of before, right? And then so you're like the Andrew Benintendi's, the Yohan Moncados, and the Martin Maldonados. Literally the three names that I wrote down as well that we should mention. But there's a reason why you've heard of them and they're not on the original team. It's because the
Yeah.
original team was like, this isn't really working out. But to your point, went from one sock that was red and they washed it apparently, and now they are white. But I don't see it doing much. I see very to little no pitching on this team. It's going to be a long season for the White Sox. I have them coming in fifth.
All right. Yeah, we both see both them and the Royals again rebuilding and starting from scratch essentially.
Exactly. Moving on to third place from last year was the Cleveland Guardians. This one's kind of like a hometown team. Is she closer to Cleveland or Cincy? I forgot.
They're kind of in the middle. They live in
In the
Columbus,
middle?
which is in the middle of the state, and the other two
Oh,
at the
okay.
opposite ends, north and south. So kind
Oh,
of,
okay.
I guess, middle-ish. Not really a home team for either of them, I guess.
I guess not. I guess not. But anyways, Cleveland Guardians. Third place last year. You have them maintaining that?
No, actually, I have them improving. I think that they're kind of sneaky good. I don't think they're going to ultimately win the division, but I do have them moving up to second place. I think having Jose Ramirez as who is one of the best players in all of baseball, I think, and doesn't get talked about enough because he's in Cleveland and they're not the greatest team, and they're stuck in kind of an division. But they do have some young talent with Stephen Kwan in the outfield and RBI machine Josh Naylor, who's I know him and his brother. His brother plays catcher, I think, too. So there's the Naylor brothers there. Their rotation is not terrible. I mean, Shane Bieber's still there at the top of it.
Right.
They still do. They do have Tristan McKenzie, who's a young kid that they brought up. I don't know if they got him in a trade from somebody or brought him up through their own system. And then they also still have Carlos Carrasco, who used to be the Mets pitcher a couple years ago, who was really good and hasn't been the same because I think he had cancer a few years ago and was able to come
Ah.
back from it. But he's still solid and like a nice 3 or 4 guy in the rotation. So I think they have that. The biggest thing for me, I think that is going to hurt them though in the long run is they lost Terry Francona, who retired last year from managing finally. And I mean, they brought in Stephen Vogt, who was a former D-back, actually, the catcher for us. I think he was there 1 year with the Diamondbacks. But he's one of those guys who's kind of been around a game a long time. He did spend a year off after retiring as the bullpen coach for the Mariners and I think the quality control coach as well.
Hmm.
So he knows what he's doing. Again, and catchers who tend to become managers tend to kind of know what's going on because you're kind of the
True.
manager on the field.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to be good for them. But at the end of the day, I still think they're not going to have enough to ultimately win this division, even though, again, this division's not going to be very good overall.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be tight. I think between the Guardians, Tigers, and Twins is kind of where the fight's gonna be at. And to me, this one kind of really was a toss-up because this team is actually pretty good, but I don't know how good. I mean, their main guy, as you mentioned, is Jose Ramirez, who is awesome. But my favorite play from him is when he doubles, he slides into second, and Tim Anderson just kind of doesn't get out of the space. My favorite play is him just knocking him out. Down goes Anderson, straight 1-2 right to the freaking face. Oh, that was so good. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, they basically have Ramirez and Shane Bieber, like you mentioned, on the mound. I don't really know anybody else that they've got on that
Yeah.
squad. So the reason and the reason why I have them kind of staying where they were in third is because I think that's where they were last year. And to your point, they've lost Francona, who is one of the better managers in Major League history, at least of our time watching Major
Oh,
League
yeah,
history. I'm
for
not
sure.
saying he's the best one. I'm just saying he's one of the better ones. So that's a
Absolutely.
big loss in my opinion. Um, but honestly, the only thing I gotta say is watch out for freaking Ramirez in that ring, bro. Dude's nasty. He got that. He got those hooks and stuff. So, yeah, I see the Guardians coming in third in this one. Um, kind of just sitting right where they were last year. So I think they're going to fight with the Tigers and the Twins a little bit towards
Yeah.
the middle of the season, but I think they kind of settle into third.
Yeah, I don't expect them to be like under 500 necessarily. They might win
Yeah,
83, 84 games and be slightly above. But yeah, I'm with you there. I don't think they're going to ultimately have enough to win this division and even get a playoff spot at all.
got you. Yeah. All right. Moving on to the last two teams in the AL Central. We've got in second place last year were the Detroit Tigers.
It's just
Do
crazy to
you
think.
have them maintaining or no? No, you said Guardians are in second. So where do you leave now the Tigers?
This is where I have the Tigers dropping just below. And again, I
Oh,
don't think
okay.
they're going to be terrible as well. I think they're just them and Cleveland's kind of go back and forth as far as battling for second, but I think ultimately Cleveland will have it. I just this team has some like old vets on it that are like kind of past their prime or had some good years, and one of them being Javier Baez. Like he hasn't really been good since he left and signed with the
True.
Tigers. Like his
Yeah.
offense the last couple of years has slowly gotten worse and disappeared. So I think that trend's going to continue. Now his defense might still be solid, but they don't really have a whole lot of pitching either. I just look at this
Mm,
team as I mean, they have Jack Flaherty, who they signed, who was a free agent, and they brought in Kenta Maeda, who was on Minnesota last year. So there's again some nice veterans, but nobody that you're like, oh man, we got to face that guy today. Like he's the guy in the rotation that we landed on. Like they're just kind of 500 pitchers, probably going to give up an ERA of 4 to 5. Like nothing earth shattering. That's like, oh man, I don't know what we're going to do. And then the other part of it too is I look at it and I feel like AJ Hinch is their coach, and he's not that great of a coach. Like he
he
did
need
great in
he needs
Houston,
speed.
but obviously we learned that might have been a little different.
A
Not
little
really him.
inflated. Yeah.
He also was the coach of the Diamondbacks for a year and a half, and his record in that time was 89 and 123. So again, I don't necessarily think he's a great leader or is able to like. I mean, they're last year, and I kind of expect the same. They might ultimately sneak up a little bit with the Indian or Guardians. Wow, I almost said Indian. That's weird. It's been so long too.
Right?
But ultimately, I think they're just going to be again probably around 500, maybe 81 and 81, exactly at 500 to be honest. But not anything worth writing home about or thinking they're going to sneak into even a wild card spot.
Yeah. This is where I kind of get boring. As you can see, I've had it almost in the same exact order except the Royals and Sox flipping. And I've got the Tigers coming in second again. Obviously, I've got the Guardians in third, and I think the Twins are a little too good. But I kind of had second and third place as a toss up between the Tigers or between Detroit and Cleveland. But I'm going to run with the Tigers here. They took second last year, and I think that they've improved their overall team. The pieces that you mentioned in Kenta Maeda and Jack Flaherty come in to kind of add some depth. Now, granted, they're not huge signings, but enough for the Tigers to be happy about. And
Yeah.
just depth in general is good in baseball, especially after a very long season. They also added Andrew Chafin and Shelby Miller in the bullpen, which again,
Oh,
not earth shattering stuff, but worth it, right? And I do think that Javi Baez maybe shakes off this slump that he's been in ever since he basically left Chicago. Even a
yeah.
little bit after the World Series when in Chicago he was,
Yeah.
So I'm saying he kind of gets a little bit closer back to Chicago days, or at least somewhat maybe reminiscent of it. And that's what kind of keeps him in second place. So.
Man, I forgot Shelby Miller was still in the league until you said he was in Detroit. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
all
Well,
we know how that went for the Diamondbacks, so that's why I'm
not
shocked
great.
he's even still around. And
Yeah,
Chafin
he's
is
moved to
still
the pen.
pitching. Chafin's
Yeah,
like 35 or 36. I think he's got to be up there in age. He's been around a long time. The
again,
sheriff, man, he's
yeah,
still
not
doing
earth shattering for Detroit, but improvement nonetheless. At least they're people you've heard of, right?
Yeah, and maybe if Chafin does good, I don't know what his contract is like, but maybe if he does good and they're not doing good as a team, maybe that's a trade piece they use at the
True.
deadline to get something else in the future and get a minor leaguer or something.
Yeah, I can see that. That makes sense. Well, we've made it to the very last team here in the AL Central, and
Yep.
that is the Minnesota Twins. If you've all been paying attention, you could kind of tell where Corey and I have them this year, as we've kind of already covered 5 through 2. Please, Corey, tell me why the Twins are coming in first place.
Well, they're going to repeat as champs because, as I mentioned a few times, this is like the worst division in baseball. They won 87 games last year and won the division by 9 games. So that tells you,
Ouch.
yeah, that tells you how bad this division was last year. So even if the Guardians and the Tigers do have a slight improvement and get over 500, if they win 85 to 87 games, they could just win this division again. They did lose Sonny Gray from the rotation and Kente Maeda, we talked about, but they do have a lot of like young pieces. Like Byron Buxton's not young anymore, but defensively he's great. In the outfield, his numbers offensively have never. I mean, he batted 200 last year, so he's not very good at the plate. Occasionally, he has some pop. He'll probably get you 15 to 20 home runs, even if the average is down. They do have catcher Christian Vasquez, who was on the Red Sox in 2018 when they won the World Series, and he's pretty solid. He's actually one of the better players they have on this roster. And then you look at they added Carlos Santana, the switch hitting veteran, who's could play DH, and I feel like another one of those guys who just keeps playing year to year on a contract, and everywhere he goes, like last year he was in Pittsburgh. They started out really well, and then he ended up getting traded at the deadline when they started falling apart. But he's always kind of a part of a winning culture and organization, so I feel like
Hmm,
that's going to carry over. Max Kepler is not talked about enough as a great outfielder in the American League.
agree.
I feel like he gets kind of lost in the shuffle again because the Twins are not that great in the division. And then they also added Manuel Margot from the Dodgers, excuse me, who got him from, let's see, who did they get him in the trade for? Oh, from Tampa Bay, and then they just basically traded him to Minnesota to get
Oh,
rid
for
of him.
Glasnow.
Yeah,
Got you.
to get rid of him. Like, whatever, that's fine. Get you an extra glove. He's good defensively. His offense is but his defense will be good, and then hopefully that'll save some runs and keep them within some games because again, their pitching's not great. And oh yeah, they have Carlos Correa. I don't know what to expect from him anymore at this point, but it's crazy to me. Correa, I don't even think is 30 yet. If I looked up correctly, I don't even think he's 30 yet.
I
Which
remember
is
when him and Altuve were at opposite ends of the infield. Well, not you know what I'm saying,
yeah,
holding up the middle of the Astros infield, and they thought as in me and damn near everybody who watched baseball, that this was going to be an insane combo for a very long time because not only defensively are they kind of lights out, but when he was in Houston, Correa was a monster behind the plate, not behind the plate, at the plate as well.
yeah.
So, yeah, he kind of has fallen off. But I'm with you. I hope you finish your point. I apologize, not
No,
necessarily in the
no,
sense
it's
to
all
rush it, but
good.
now the fact that I'm talking, I also have the Twins winning, and I don't know if this is as much of a plus for the Twins as I think it might be a negative to the rest of the competition in their division, or maybe a combination of both, right? But I think there's a reason why they won the division last year. Although there's always teams ready to pounce and kind of take over, right? But not this time. Not quite in this division. The Twins should have a decently easy time kind of taking this one. Again, I think the rest of the division damn near is rebuilding.
Yeah.
Besides maybe one or two good players here or there, dang near everybody's in a full rebuild mode, and they're kind of doing it at a snail's pace. Twins have, like I said, similar roster, and you mentioned they've added they lose pieces like Sonny Gray and Joey Gallo, but Joey Gallo isn't kind of the only thing that they've lost in necessarily his output, but he was like a veteran, you know what I mean? Um, so I don't know. I think the core that they have though, Correa, Kepler, Buxton, and Royce Lewis. There's
Oh,
another
Royce
one of
Lewis.
their core pieces, core starters. Is another is enough to kind of keep them above the rest of the competition. Maybe some minor tinkering at the deadline to kind of get them a reliever in the bullpen, or maybe if they are looking for a starter because they feel like they need one. Maybe some minor tweaks at the deadline. But I'm with you. I think this team kind of plays it smart, wins the division, and does kind of what they do last year. I mean, they won the wild card round,
Yeah,
So
which was the first time they'd won a playoff round since they were in the ALCS in 2002 and lost to the Angels to go to the World Series. That's how long it had been since they'd won a series. They'd been in the playoffs a lot of
wow.
times in that time period, but they'd got swept by the Yankees like 3 or 4 times in a row. Like they hadn't even won a game for a couple playoff series in a row, but they finally got over the hump last year. And you mentioned Roy Lewis, like former number one overall pick, man, that guy's good when he's
Mhm.
healthy. And I think he's
Right.
already injured and on the IL
Oh,
for
dang, for real?
yeah, like the first weekend in. So that's not a good start. The other thing that they do have that I think again gets forgotten about because they're in Minnesota is they have one of the better closers in all of baseball in Johan Duran, which he is flat
Mm.
out a fireball thrower. And from what
Literally his intro, remember?
I
That's
was
the
gonna
thing
say,
with
and from
yes.
my time visiting Minnesota last year and seeing him come out onto the field from the bullpen, he has one of, if not the best entrances from the bullpen of all of baseball right now. It is fantastic. The music, the graphics they use in Minnesota at one of the better stadiums, I think, in all of baseball at this time. It's awesome, and I would say it's fire, as the kids would say
Yeah.
these days, right? But
Right,
he
right,
is a
right.
flamethrower, and that is a good thing to have at the back end of the bullpen. So if they're in a lot of one run games come the end of the night, then they're definitely going to have a chance to close those down with him at the back end.
Yeah. And that's kind of why we both have them repeating. They have the best roster. Great, not a perfect roster, but the best roster here, and the experience to kind of, I think, keep it at that level, that division winning level, even if it is just above, the 500 mark. So,
Yeah, actually, I couldn't agree more. Again, this is not a great division, but you don't have
mm,
to be great to win it either. So
nope,
that's the sad
nope.
part.
As long as you win your division, you're in and hosting. So
Might be a wild card round, best of three,
it's
but you
okay.
are hosting.
You're hosting exactly, and in the wild card, you host all of the games. Right?
Yeah,
There's
that's
no
true.
travel, so you get
Yeah, that's
all
a
of them
good
at
point.
home. At least it gives yourself the better chance, which is what they did last year and took advantage of it by moving on and beating the Blue Jays. I think it was right.
Yeah, I believe you are
Yeah.
correct.
Well, that wraps up the order, at least of how we've got it. Let us know in the comments if you agree, or if not, just tell us what your order is for the AL Central. Before we leave, though, we're going to leave you with a couple headlines that we expect to see at the beginning, at the end of the season here in 2024. For the AL Central, it doesn't, again, it could be related to a specific person, the team in general, or maybe the division as a whole. Corey, who do you have as what do you have, apologize, as the headline?
Well, we talked about the Tigers and Guardians kind of back and forth in second and third place. And even though I have them finishing ultimately at third, I do think they're going to get at 500 or maybe over for the first time in 9 years, which seems like kind of insane. Because I remember in I think it was the late 2008 to 2013, they were always good. They had Manuel Ordonez and Miguel Cabrera in their prime
Yep.
and Verlander, and they were going to they went to 2 World Series, I think, and lost both of them, unfortunately. But they were good for a long time. But the fact that they haven't been over 500 in 9 years is kind of just like, wow, I didn't realize they had really tanked that bad the last few. So I'm hoping that they can at least improve enough to get over 500 for the first time in 9 years.
Damn, almost a decade. That's a long time, man. That's a long
A
time
lot
to
of
be sitting
losing.
there. Definitely, definitely. Okay, well, my headline is going to be of a specific team, and we're going to just kind of add on to all the praise we've heaped onto Minnesota so far. Minnesota clinches division first, and I'm kind of thinking the date on this might even be like August.
Wow.
Yeah, because when I look at when I break down the other divisions, right, there's at least one or two teams that are going to be competing. The only thing I can say is maybe the Dodgers do it first because they just beat the crap out of everybody. But other than that, I mean, the Braves, but they've got the Phillies to contend with, right? The Yankees and the Orioles, they got those people to contend with. We discussed the AL West previously. That's freaking they were competing down to the wire
Yeah.
last year. So I
True.
just feel like there's a lot of at least one, two, if not one, two, threes. And this one seems to be kind of like a nice gap. I think Minnesota is the first to clinch the division and can do so very early.
Wow. August. That'd be crazy considering how bad this division is. That means the Twins might be better than I thought on the record.
Or everyone's just as bad.
Really
Unless
bad.
your prediction of the Tigers being over 500 is correct as well, then the Twins may not do it as early as we predict, or as I predict. Apologies.
Very good point. Very good point as well.
We want to, before we wrap up the entire episode, we're going to kind of interject one of these segments that we've done before. It's been a minute since we've done it, especially in this little new format, but we want to make sure that we're kind of keeping it mental, I guess you would say. Corey, break it down for me, man.
Yeah, so we haven't done it in a few weeks, but this is another segment of Corey's Mental Health Minute, which is brought to you by Sheldon Extinguisher. I just wanted to give another quote and a website in order to get some more information if you need some help. The quote that I'm sharing today is: "Your mental health is just as important as your career or education. which means, again, it is
I like
super
that.
important. It should be something at the top of your priority list. If you want more information or need somewhere to get more help or someone to talk to, you can visit talkspace.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, this slide is up on the screen now with that information for you. But yeah, the last week or so has been kind of, the last few months have really been kind of up and down for me, but the last week or so has been kind of back in that down end of it. So I've been trying to work through some things, have therapy again coming up this week. So just trying to work on some things that I need to focus on and take care of. So this is just another way to share with everybody else that it's okay if you have those ups and downs. We are human. We have emotions, even if you're a guy, because I know typically, men don't cry, but I cry. It's okay. People cry and
Hmm.
have emotions, and it's okay to have those. So this is just another way to make sure we share that and have everybody have an opportunity to find whatever website works for you, or if a certain quote hits you right and makes you kind of realize that you need to work on some things.
And it's two things to kind of add to that because I love this piece. I couldn't agree more with you as far as kind of taking in. I loved how you, because I was going to even bring it up, but I love how you kind of led me to it, the whole masculinity part. To me, man, in my opinion, dude, it takes a real man to kind of admit that you're not perfect. And
Right?
I've never walked this earth and found anybody who has. So I think it's more mature and more manly to know that you kind of should work on things instead of ignoring it and just try to get over it, kind of thing,
Yeah,
or flood yourself with substance or something like that. So couldn't agree more on that. Second one, me personally, I'm a man of faith. Easter was just yesterday. Today is Monday the 1st. So Easter was just yesterday. If you're lost, if you have been talking to somebody and you're still searching for something else, feel like there's something more, I'm just telling you, Jesus loves you. Something that has definitely helped me in my life and helped me kind of grow to mature in a lot of different ways. So whatever kind of floats your boat, just
absolutely.
look out for yourself is basically all we're trying to say.
Yep. Whatever path or way of doing that works for you is all that matters, but just make sure you're taking care of
Care of
yourself
yourself.
at the end of the day.
Yep. Yep. 100%. It's because nobody else is going to do it for you. You got to take care of yourself for yourself.
Yep, that is a fact.
All right. Make sure that you check out all of the rest of the MLB Division Prediction Series. In this episode, we obviously selected our AL champs, and we'll continue our travels through the majors over the next few episodes.
And thanks for seeing things from our view from the bench. I'm Brendan.
And I'm Corey, and like we always say, enjoy the sports until we talk again.
Peace. This was a Sycamore Fourth Studios production.